Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lexi Andrews, and I'm with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance here at Ohio EPA, and I'll be moderating this afternoon's webinar. Today's webinar, Ohio EPA's Response Program, What to Do and What to Expect When You Have a Spill, is presented by Jody Billman-Kotsko, who is an environmental manager working for our Office of Emergency Response. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you participate and engage with our presenter during this afternoon session. On this slide here, you'll see a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on the right side of your computer screen. For this webinar, you are listening in using your computer's audio. If you do have sound issues, first try refreshing your browser or logging out and logging back into the session. If you're still having audio issues, you may need to check your computer's audio settings. Please feel free to submit questions to today's presenter by typing in your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. Basically, that's that little button you see there that has a question mark in a chat bubble. If we do not have time to answer your questions, the presenter will reach out to you via email and assist you with your question. Our speaker will also be asking the audience to type in responses to some of our questions about emergency response. So please chat them here using the questions field. And if you've attended some of our other sessions, we've used the live polling feature, but today we want you to actually type in some responses so we can be a little bit more interactive with our audience. Today's webinar is being recorded and the presentation will be available in the handout section of your attendee interface. Our presenter did have some last minute changes, so we'll put the most up-to-date presentation on our conference landing page, and Dan Sauer will be sending out a link to that. So stay tuned for that. We'll update our landing page with more session recordings and presentation materials over the next several weeks. Once the webinar is edited, you'll receive a link to the recording and a follow-up email along with a session survey. The session survey will also appear once the session is over. We would greatly appreciate it if you could fill it out and let us know how we are doing, and let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance will also be included in that email about a day or so after the session. This presentation is approved for 1 hour of registered sanitarian and sanitarian in training continuing education units. If you did not get a chance to enter your RS or SIT number when you registered, please make sure you provide that with your name in the Q&A feature. Attendees seeking American Planning Association credit may also do this through APA's self-reporting option. Log into your My APA account and select the self-reported credit options to receive credit. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter today. Again, today's presenter is Jody Billman-Kotsko from Ohio EPA's Office of Emergency Response. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks, Lexi. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for listening to me. And thank you, Ohio EPA DEFA, for putting on this conference. I'm honored to give a presentation. And, I really would like to do this to a live audience. So we are going to try to interact a little bit more with you by using that question field. So when I'm asking questions, please put your responses in there. And that way we can engage a little bit more virtually. Semi-accidents. This is what everyone thinks of when we say an incident, a semi-truck wreck. It's our most frequent incident, and everyone knows in a truck accident, diesel fuel is spilled. And the EPA helps make sure that that diesel fuel gets cleaned up properly, and we protect the water. What I'd like to talk about today is what is reportable by the Ohio EPA and the odd incidents, and to give you the basics of when to call the Ohio EPA and some reasoning to call the Ohio EPA. Again, in the question pane, I want you to engage with me and answer some of the questions that I'm asking you. Let's start with an incident. Is this reportable? It's a white substance in the waterway. And the big factor is water. Yes, it is reportable because it's in the waterway. So if you get something in the waterway, you should call the Ohio EPA's emergency response hotline. Just so you know, what would we do with a white waterway, with a white stream or a creek? We would track the incident. An on-scene coordinator, and I'm going to refer to them as OSC for the rest of the presentation, they would walk the creek and they would find an outfall, and then that would lead us to a storm drain. Our OSCs track incidents. They follow the trail. They work with the spiller. Once they figure out who it is, we're also going to call them the responsible party, the spiller, and they would clean up the release. For this incident, the cleanup would be to remove the white water from the creek, maybe plug that outfall, and then power wash the residual material from the storm drain and capture the water. Oh, here is the storm drain. Ohio EPA Office of Emergency Response, we work 365 days a year. And we operate in a north and a south. We have 3 managers, a chief, 12 on-scene coordinators, duty officers, night duty officers, but I am not going to bore you with our hierarchy. If you'd like to know more about it, happy to explain it to you, but let's just talk about incidents today. So what is reportable? Releases to waterways. So you're going to keep hearing me say water. I've shown you 2 incidents, the White Creek and the diesel fuel in the waterway, a semi-truck accident. So let's get that a little bit further. Let's talk about a potential impact to water. Okay, so here, everybody, do you think this is reportable? It's not off-site. It's in containment. It's not threatening a waterway. Does anyone think that this is reportable? I'm looking to see if anyone's going to engage, but actually, no, this is not reportable. So this is ethylene glycol. They got everything in containment, and the responsible party cleaned everything up on site. Nothing got into a waterway, nothing got off site. So it is not reportable. So next, I want to talk about the same substance. This is ethylene glycol also. Why is this one reportable as opposed to the first one I just showed you? This is a pond, and this company called the hotline because, can you see this fountain back here? Let's see, there's a fountain right here. The fountain was red. The company thought someone had dumped something into this pond, and so they called us. However, it didn't leave the site. And actually, when we arrived on scene, we helped investigate, and a couple days later, we realized that it did impact the groundwater. So yes, this incident is reportable because it impacted groundwater. Well, how did we clean this up? Actually, a couple days later, after we realized that it impacted the groundwater, come to find out that this tank farm was leaking and there was a broken, I think it was a leak in the tank farm. Yeah. So it's a big cleanup because that's a lot of glycol. Okay, here. So here's a point where I want you to interact. This is lime sludge. This is an incident. Is this reportable? Oops. This is lime sludge on the street. It's not initially in a waterway, but the clue here is, I'm going to get my little pen, is this. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm trying to draw a circle around it. This is a storm drain. So where do storm drains go? They go right into a creek or a stream. So yes, this is reportable because it went into the stream. So how do we clean this up? How do we stop this? This incident, we could stop the release by creating a dam around that storm drain. We use straw bales. And also down in the creek, we would create a dam so that the incident wouldn't travel further. And actually in this hard boom, there are straw bales too. You can't see that, but the straw bales would collect some of that fine material in the lime. And yes, it was an accident, but you still have to stop the release and then stop the material from traveling further. Yeah, and we hear it all the time. It is an accident, but you still have to clean it up. You are responsible. So what must be reported? This is the legal definition, anything that threatens a waterway. And then there are two lists in 40 CFR Part 3355 and in the list of lists for CERCLA, anything above the RQ and an oil. All of that must be reported. Who enforces this? The CERC enforces reporting requirements. The law says that within 30 minutes, the spiller must report the incident to the Ohio EPA hotline and the fire department and the county LEPC. That's the legal definition. However, we do want you to call on other incidents so that we can help you clean them up more quickly and more efficiently. So what about this one? It's reportable. As you can see, this is a semi-truck accident. These are bags of fertilizer, and there is no waterway impacted. Anyway. What would you ask yourself if this was your semi-truck and you had all these bags of fertilizer? You would want to say, or you may think about, is there a potential impact to waterway? You always have to be thinking a little bit ahead. And also, we would want you to think about the weather and the location, because in the location, there could be a ditch if it rains, and then you would have impact to a waterway. Is there a stream nearby? And a little too much of anything can cause a mess. So yes, this incident would be reported because of the potential impact to a waterway. And a little bit too much of anything upsets water. We have fish killed. Why do we report them? Because there has to be a reason for the fish kill. How do we figure out what's causing the fish kill? We carry test strips and instruments and other field application tests to help us determine what has caused the upset. So if you see a fish kill or you've caused a fish kill, yes, that is reportable. So here's a nice incident. Nice probably isn't the great word, but here's an incident. It's a transformer. Let's say an automobile caused this accident. First of all, I'd like you to chime in and answer who is responsible for this incident. And as you can see, it's dark. It's the middle of the night. Why should you call the Ohio EPA quickly, besides the fact that it is a rule? Because it's in the middle of the night. It's not my fault. And yeah, there's a little unnamed tributary close by, but it's not flowing. no, we don't need to wake anyone up. Well, that's really not what should happen. Because this incident particularly traveled quite a distance. This is a really small tributary, but as you can see, that transformer oil traveled a distance. And our OSCs, even if it's the middle of the night, we conduct some mapping and we can help you determine what you should do over the phone, and then we can come to the scene in the morning. We don't want to have to leave our house in the middle of the night if we don't have to. But if you engage us, we will provide technical assistance and provide the best way to get that incident cleaned up, the most efficient way. Which brings me to, so, okay, you're trying to convince me to call the Ohio EPA. What can I expect? Well, when you call the hotline, you're going to get asked a lot of questions, and you might not know all of them, and that's okay. After an incident is called into the hotline and we make a report, our duty officers call our on-scene coordinators, and they do some triaging. They do some mapping. They do some phone calls. They can work with locals. They provide technical assistance to you, to the reporting party, to the spiller, to the locals on how to get things cleaned up efficiently and the most cost-effective way to protect the waterway. If you're lucky enough to get a physical or an on-scene response, you can expect some experts. They have cleaned up just about everything. And if they haven't cleaned it up, they know who to ask. We depend on each other so that we can do things efficiently and effectively. We also can help you so your incident doesn't go farther. So when an incident travels more, it gets more expensive. We also have some cleanup materials. Like I showed you in the transformer incident, we carry spill pads and we carry boom and we carry a lot of things with us to help on an incident scene. We can screen material, we can test material. And just a few of the things that we carry with us are, we carry a multi-ray, YSI meter, test strips for ammonia, pH. We do salinity test strips, we have ammonia checkers, and we use some chemetric test kits. So, this is a weird one. This is odd. Why would you call the Ohio EPA for a mercury? Not in the waterway, it's inside. Why would you call us for a broken thermometer in a school? You could call us because we have a Lumex meter, which is a mercury vapor instrument, which allows us to measure the vapors of mercury in a room or outside or the area above the spill area. So if you spill mercury, we will happily assist you in screening to identify where the mercury has spilled. And then we will also, after you've cleaned it up or hired a contractor, we can also come back and screen and make sure that your cleanup has been effective. So here is some brine. This is de-icer. This is an actual incident. So if you can see this staining, trying to use the pen, I'm sorry. This is all brine. It's de-icer fluid that actually has leaked from some storage tanks back in here. It has leaked all the way down the driveway, and then it entered a storm sewer. this caused a fish kill. This went off-site and into our waterway. So yes, brine, even though it's salt water, and we use it to apply during icy situations, it is reportable if it goes off-site and causes a fish kill because it went into the waterway. So how can we help you with brine? How do we clean up this kind of an incident? We have a conductivity probe and we have salinity test strips. And if you can see, here's my pen again, we defined this small area to be excavated. And you can probably tell that it's just a scrape off the top. We didn't have to go down 6 feet. We didn't have to go down 6 inches. Just the top couple of inches of soil that were contaminated were removed. And actually, you can see how it zigzagged through here. And you didn't have to dig up the whole area. So we can help you identify what needs to be removed so that you don't have to clean up something and the bill or the cleanup costs become astronomical. Concrete. So what? Usually think of concrete as this inert substance or something that really isn't a problem. Why should you report concrete? Well, this is an incident from this year where a truckload of concrete, bags of concrete, were spilled across 70. And so why would we want to get a report or be involved with bags of concrete that have spilled all over the highway? Well, when concrete cures or you add water, it is a chemical reaction and it releases byproducts which upset a waterway. And like I said before, location and weather. And if you can see, as on all highways, there's a slight slope down here and there's a ditch, which could potentially, if it rains or any water gets on this, go into the ditch, and then it always leads to a tributary or a stream or a river. So we need to clean up this concrete the best we can, the quickest we can, one, to get the highway opened up, and then two, so that we don't have an impact to a waterway. So this is a potential impact to a waterway. Also, we can help you figure out how to best clean this up the most effective way. More concrete. Yeah, I just did a concrete job, or we get spillers saying, I was just washing out my concrete. Concrete washouts cause fish kill. Or I've got a little extra concrete, I'm just gonna put it right along this culvert. It's not gonna hurt anything. Well, again, when the concrete cures, it causes a chemical reaction and it depletes the oxygen in the water column and you have a fish kill. So please don't rinse out your concrete or put a little extra concrete along the culvert unless you've planned it out and determined that you're not going to impact the waterway. Is this incident reportable? This is a home heating oil in Brown County. Is this reportable? This is a broken line on the tank that holds home heating oil. And it hasn't left the property. So if it hasn't left the property, not impacting waterway, this is not a reportable incident until it gets in the waterway. So as this home heating oil wasn't managed, it traveled down the yard and into the ditch. So now it becomes reportable. Home heating oil isn't one of our favorite things because it's really messy. And most of the time we're dealing with a property owner they don't have the experience or with environmental spills or cleanup. So it's really, it's difficult. Here is a corn oil in Shelby County. Yeah, corn oil is biodegradable. Would you think it would harm anything? Is there any reason that we would report this? Well, it has, in these pictures, it hasn't entered a waterway yet on this railroad trestle. However, it eventually ended up in this stream. This incident was quite extensive. The corn oil got in the waterway, and we assisted in finding the leading edge, which is the furthest point for which the oil had traveled. We set containment, and we identified locations where the material could be removed, along with providing a lot of technical assistance on how to dispose of this substance. And again, this traveled quite a distance, and we had several containment points and removal points. Grain. So this is a silo collapse in Clark County. Would you say this is reportable? It hasn't left the site. It's not in a waterway. Why would you engage us? You look at the picture closely, right here. Here's a storm drain. It's not cleaned up properly, and if we get something in the storm drain, it's bad, because as grain breaks down, it creates byproducts which are not good for the waterways. It upsets the water, causes a fish kill, and again, you can't put anything in the waterway. You can't allow anything to get in the water, or it is reportable. Also, with this incident, I'd like you, I don't know if you can tell by this picture, but this is a gray sky. So again, I would like you to think about location and weather, because due to the location with that storm drain, it is reportable because it's a potential impact to waterway. But also, if weather is coming in, we need to quickly get this cleaned up, because the rain or any weather is only going to make this messier and harder to clean up. This is an intermodal container in Jackson County. So this was a good incident because we learned a lot. We learned quite a bit when we had this first incident. So this is not leaking. So it isn't reportable because it's leaking, but why would you want to engage the Ohio EPA with this kind of a container? Since it's not leaking, you can see that it's off the hillside. So, you know, as things go down, there's usually water. So it is a potential impact to a waterway if it leaks. And I don't know if you see on the back of this intermodal, there's all these placards. And most of the time, when you upright a tanker or intermodal, you should offload the substance inside. So we were involved in the planning so that if there was a leak during the offloading, that we would be prepared, because we would not want this to get in the waterway. There's one of those little dead fish placards on here. I'd also like to tell you, during this incident, we learned a lot, and we've had other intermodal incidents that went more quickly and also went more smoothly. We learned a lot about temperature gauges, SDSs, and fittings. So, in general, when you have an incident, your cleanup actions should be to stop, contain, recover, fix whatever needs fixed, and then dispose. And when we say stop, that could mean emptying a container. It could be plugging a storm drain. It could be plugging a hole in a container. It could be plugging the line so that no more leaks out. In this picture, we are emptying the fuel tank on a tanker. Stopping also means contain it, or I'm sorry, contain the product. And when I say contain, we use booms, or we create an earthen dam or a plywood dam, like this example. We use spill pads, anything to make sure that it doesn't move any further. Containing also means protecting those storm drains. Here in these pictures, we're using soft boom, and we're also using dirt or sand to create an earthen dam around the storm drains so that the material doesn't get into the waterway. So once you've cleaned everything up, what else do you have to do? Well, make sure everything's disposed of properly. Make sure that you do all of your reporting requirements for CERT. That means you have a 30-day follow-up. Make sure you fix the problem, and then you're going to have to reimburse the Ohio EPA. And I get this question a lot. What? A bill? No, it's not a bill. It is cost recovery for our on-scene coordinators' time. That encompasses administrative time, equipment, sampling, after-hours costs, and realistically, our experience is cheap. You are getting a bargain. So here's another incident. Is this one reportable? And when I'm talking about the incident, I would like to focus on this blue area and then this blue on the street. Is this reportable? And who is responsible? Does anyone have any ideas? Someone dumped a blue material, it's the porta potty cleaner, into the dumpster. And when the dumpster was picked up, it went into the back of the trash truck, and then it went down the street. This stuff should not get into a waterway. It will definitely cause a fish kill. Who is responsible? Who does the cleanup? Does anyone have any ideas? Technically, it would be the trash hauler. Even though they were dumped on, it is their dumpster. It's not their product. And they can do whatever they want afterwards, but the trash company would be responsible for cleaning this up. Here's a huge incident I wanted to show you. This is the big, huge train derailment that happened in Columbus. Yes, this one is reportable. I don't think there's any question about this. Here is another huge incident. This is a well pad fire. Yes, this is reportable for many different reasons. And that's all I have for you. I would definitely like some questions. No one answered any of mine.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jody. We had lots of people chatting in responses as we were going here in the questions. So thank you all for doing that. I know it's a little bit different than how we've been doing it with our polling questions. So we really appreciate everyone's participation with that there. So we're going to begin answering some of the questions that were submitted during today's webinar. Amanda Brown, who is part of Jody's team, has also been on behind the scenes chatting in questions. So Amanda, if you want to jump in and join us in responding questions, please feel free to do so. Nothing like being a little anxious on camera with the rest of us.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead and get started here. So Jody, one of the questions we got here was, what regulation indicates threatens a waterway is reportable?
That is in the CERC, back in the slide. Actually, I don't want to misquote the numbers.
That's all right. Amanda, do you want to jump in? Amanda was able to respond to the question, and she
okay, go ahead.
She put in the ORC code there.
You can see me now. Okay, so it is through the CERC, so they do have requirements for reporting within 30 minutes. They give a pretty well-defined definition of what they consider to be reportable quantities. So you can always refer to that if you have any questions about that. But specifically under Ohio regulations, we refer to Ohio Revised Code. 6111 defines waters of the state, and anything within that, like discoloration, odor, any sort of hazardous substance that goes in there needs to be reported under the Ohio law with that. But then further, if it is something that's in like a navigable water, that would further go through the NRC.
Thank you. All right, our next one is if you report for something that isn't classified as needing to be reported and the EPA comes out to investigate, is there any sort of fine for false reporting and wasting the EPA's time? It's a good one.
No, how's that?
Even better answer.
Yeah. And we are not in the business of not engaging with people, and we are not in the business, if we do respond and we didn't need to respond, we will not send you a cost recovery for that. We only send a cost recovery when we have responded to an incident that is in a waterway or potentially is going to impact a waterway. There has to be a nexus for us to be involved. And if we don't need to be, then no.
Perfect. Another question we got was, does the power company have a requirement to call Ohio EPA for downed lines?
So the answer to that is no, unless it's a pole-mounted transformer. So that photo that Jody showed with the corn silo collapse, the reason I went out to that one was because there was a pole-mounted transformer. That's what that gentleman was doing there. It fell when the silo collapsed and then released oil. And so specifically with power lines, when they have those pole-mounted transformers, we have concerns about PCB content being in the oil. So those should always be reported if there's a release, but a basic power outage, you don't need to report that to Ohio EPA.
Perfect. This is a good one. I think this is really fascinating. Jody, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, sorry, I heard you talk. Amanda, you're crushing it. So the next one is, what if we don't know the extent of impact, i.e. a fish kill?
That is a great question. Engage us early, because if you engage us early, we can help prevent and we can help you diagnose things. Amanda, she's an on-scene coordinator. If she's talking to you, she's going to have some tips. She's going to ask for some pictures. Pictures are our best friend. This technology really helps us, and we can help diagnose that and just give you, again, our expertise so that maybe we don't have to go out there, or, hey, can you try this and give me a call back or send us a picture? It is really a good conversation if you definitely don't know the extent. Again, earlier is better.
Thank you. All right, next one. What separates brine usage in the summer months versus the winter month applications?
So the majority of brine that we respond to with Ohio EPA is affiliated with the oil and gas industry. That's most frequently seen on the eastern side of the state. So when we have releases in the summer, it's usually brine related to drilling operations for oil and gas. The the one that Jody referenced in the presentation was a release that I had in the winter months from an ODOT facility. So that was concentrated road salt. So it's very potent, obviously caused, you could just see, dead grass right away. So there's really no difference in how we respond to them. It's just so much like the chemical nature and the cause of the release. So it's going to be more about like who we're interacting with. So obviously oil and gas related things, we're going to be involving DNR oil and gas for those cleanups, but something that's just road salt, we'll handle that more on our own.
Thank you, Amanda. We've gotten a lot of questions about time period for notification. So here's one. What is agency priority for 30-minute notifications? For example, when you have oil spill where fire, sewer, CERC, NRC, and LEPC all need notified and one phone call can take 15 minutes.
We definitely understand that. I know calling something into our spill hotline takes time, and there's even lag time. I know I saw a question about if I make a call, how soon will Amanda or an OSE be on scene? There's a lot of documenting that goes into reporting anything, and we fully understand that. But per the CERC guidelines, just with like the community right to know and everything, you need to have a document that you made an effort within 30 minutes. So whether that first calls to the fire department, our spill hotline, or the LEPC, something needs to be done within 30 minutes because we see time and time again that incidents can change drastically within a short period of time. So I know someone had asked the question about what if I call it in and it's not quite to the extent, like I don't know that much information. Just call in what you can because that time period can change, and we do take that into consideration when you are reporting.
Thank you, Amanda. So another one we have is, how would you properly dispose of concrete? Just in the trash?
Yeah, solid waste.
Yeah, so
depending on to that.
Yeah, depending on like the type of it. I mean, like liquid concrete, if it's in a waterway or something, it would be handled differently. But if it's just like bulk concrete, yeah, you can just dispose of that without concerns of it spreading.
Perfect. Sorry, catching up here. We've had lots of good questions coming in.
That's good. I'm glad. I like it.
Me too. I was trying to keep up with it, so I said them all correctly. So now I'm catching up. All right. The next one is, if you have a spill on site on grass where it can't get off site, how do you determine where you need to report, considering the groundwater impact possibly? Is that a judgment call? Good question.
For where to report?
Or when?
So let's see. So if you have a spill and you know it can't get off site, how do you determine whether you need to report it? Are you just considering, I'm guessing, are you just considering the groundwater impact possibility? And they're asking, how do you know when to make that call? Is it a judgment call, or do you have other information as an OSC?
So they do have public lists of reportable quantities. So whatever chemical you think has been released, you can refer to the list of reportable quantities. Like if you spilled 1 gallon of gasoline on your grass, that's not a reportable quantity. But the great thing about Ohio EPA is we work with a lot of different agencies, and we have a wealth of knowledge about if you report an incident and you can give us an accurate location, we can refer to all these databases that let us know how deep it is to the groundwater. Are there sensitive populations nearby? If it's going to rain within a certain time frame, even though it's just on the grass, is it going to wash off and potentially impact drinking water wells downstream? So the rule of thumb for us is just report it. There's no harm in calling to ask a question when you're reporting, or just saying, I don't know if I need to, but I just want to cover my bases here. We enjoy those calls. We like knowing what's going on. So even if it is on the grass, you can call it in, but you can refer to those public reportable quantities for further guidance.
Thank you. Next question is, does the Ohio EPA get notified by the NRC when they are informed of a spill?
We get some electronic notifications automatically. into an email. We don't get phone calls. Sometimes when that NRC incident escalates a little bit to a US EPA on-scene coordinator, they will reach out to us and inquire. But most of the time, it's an electronic notification.
All right. Here's a long one.
Okay.
Is there any rule of thumb about small spills? So this you might have just answered this actually. A small volume that meets definition in terms of not being contained and gets into a waterway. And at what size and volume do you decide not to respond? And are you always involving the local EMA office when you're responding?
So I think they're asking any quantity that gets into a waterway. A sheen, a noticeable sheen on a waterway is reportable. So with oil or hydrocarbon, any amount into a waterway is reportable. And this goes right back to Amanda's answer. Engage us early because things spread very quickly so that we can help you. And then we'll have this ongoing conversation, and you've engaged us early as opposed to when it's gone bad.
Thank you, Jody. Here's another one. You focused on water releases, but what about air releases?
So air releases they're complicated because it's in the air. And Ohio EPA does have air authorities that they've given that authority away in different areas of Ohio. So I would refer to the EPA's website. When there's an air release, you can always call it in, and we might say, hey, you need to call RAFCA because they are responsible for the air releases in that area. Depending on what kind of release it is, yes, that might be part of a bigger incident. So it doesn't hurt to call in an air release. And people who have air permits, they know when to call in, and that's a routine thing for them. But if it's something out of the ordinary that is a reaction or an air release, yes, please call it in because we would like to know about it and help you, clean it up or stop it.
Thanks, Jody. So another one we have, during office hours, should we still call the spill hotline, or is it better to call the district office directly?
Should always call the hotline. So we have rotating on-scene coordinators. So there's somebody always assigned to be on call, and it's so much better to call the hotline because they know who's on call and they can dispatch very quickly to the on-scene coordinator. Usually if you have a spill and you call the district office, they're just going to tell you to call the hotline. So the fastest way to get to anyone for assistance is going to be the 1-800 number.
Perfect. Lots of questions. Let's see here. Okay, so going back to your slide about the lovely porta potty blue liquid, someone would like to know, it is a tough one. Why is the person who dumped the material into the trash dumpster not held accountable since she did the illegal deed?
Well, first of all, can you find the dumper? There's the key right there. And realistically, yes, they would be responsible, but quickly and at that incident, when the incident happens, we don't know what happened. We just need to get it cleaned up and get it out of the waterway. And then there's legal.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, because as an on-scene coordinator, I unfortunately have to explain this a lot to people in the field. Like when there's a semi-accident and let's say a sedan hit the semi and they released diesel and it went in a waterway. I issued the notice of violation to this semi company because they are the ones that had the product. When you're dealing with something about liability, I'm not there to prove who's responsible. I'm there to figure out who was the owner of this material. Another example would be I had an incident where there was a pad-mounted transformer, 400 gallons of PCB oil, and a lawn care company struck the transformer and the oil leaked out. But we, as Ohio EPA, had the owner of the transformer do the cleanup because they are the ones that have the hazardous material. And that event happened 2 years ago. I'm still getting calls because it's still in court getting worked out about who's paying for it. I can issue the NOV. The company that receives the NOV is more than welcome to take whatever legal actions that they need if they were not the at-fault person. But per Ohio laws and regulations, the owner of the vessel that had the leak is the responsible party.
Yeah, strict liability.
That's really interesting. I personally don't come from the emergency response part of the agency, so it's really cool to learn about all of this. What if there is a fuel spill that reached a storm drain, but the quantity didn't show any visible sheen less than 5 gallons?
That happens sometimes. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That happens sometimes. I get a lot of calls where fire departments are just saying, hey, we're out on scene. There's like 1 gallon in the storm drain. I'm shining a flashlight in there. I don't see anything, but I know it went down there. That's something that we'll make a note of. We'll check surrounding outfalls just to make sure nothing did actually come out. But again, it just kind of goes back to the courtesy of when in doubt, just report it. If you know it happened, go ahead and call it in. Just to let us know. Because again, with the mapping system we have, if there is something downstream where there's a sensitive population, I can look that up and we can investigate more. So always report it if you're in doubt.
Next one. Do water departments have to report water line breaks that cause sediment to get into the municipal storm sewer system? If yes, is the water department or municipality responsible for submitting the 30-day follow-up?
This is tricky. And we don't like this, but if that water department, because most water lines have lime around them, and that line break releases lime into a waterway, then yes, that is a release and that is reportable. Now, we like to know about those because when there's a line break, it's a white slug going down a stream or a creek, and we have mystery white slugs all the time. And it would be nice to make those connections so that we could tell our concerned citizens, hey, it was a line break. And then hopefully if it's bigger than that, if it's a line break and the water system doesn't know, we can help them, kind of stop the break, stop the release, and then help put out those straw bales to collect some of that lime.
All right, we're getting close to ending time here, so we'll ask a couple more questions. Okay. One person would like to know, is a release to the environment anything that happens outside, or is it just something that is not contained?
An example is we get a lot of calls about mercury spills. I've done dozens of those, and those are indoor. It just comes back to, like reportable quantities, or if it could possibly impact human or environmental health. We need to know about that. So no, it doesn't always have to be outside. We also get calls about leaks inside of facilities. We get calls about valves breaking or something, and anhydrous ammonia going out into a closed warehouse. So any sort of release, especially if it's above the reportable quantity, should be reported, whether or not it leaves the facility.
And then it does look like we might have put the wrong number for the spill hotline. So I'm going to have one of my team members here put it in the chat for everybody. But the correct spill hotline number is 1-800-282-9378. So that was a test. We're making sure you guys knew it. And I was just kidding. But thank you for catching that, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's see. We'll do one more here. Lots of good questions. We do have a lot. So if you guys do not hear your question addressed in the next couple of minutes, just know that we'll have the presenter, Jody and Amanda, reach out to you directly via email to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, and Amanda and I don't mind even afterwards if you want additional discussion or additional, dialogue about it. Please, we welcome it.
Thank you. Is there any concern regarding releases into groundwater directly or indirectly? I don't know if they're asking about a specific situation, but that's the question.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually we have an incident that we can't even see at this point. And it's, I don't know if it's 3 feet or 6 feet. Don't hold me to that. 3 feet or 6 feet of diesel fuel on top of the groundwater. You can't see it. They noticed it in a monitoring well. And yes, that is reportable. Yeah. So those kinds of incidents are definitely reportable. And those are difficult, but we can help you work through those.
Thank you. All right, so we'll finish up with this last one here, and then we'll exit instructions, and then we'll call it a day. So our last question is, if you spill a non-hazardous material, is it still reportable?
The best example is milk is not hazardous, but we get food spills all the time. If it's in a waterway, absolutely, you should always report it.
Just like that.
Thank you both.
That's not a hazardous substance, and it got in the water, and it was a mess. Yeah.
Jody, if you don't mind, if you could switch to, I think it's the second or third to last slide there.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. So if you would like to reach out to Jody, there's her contact information. And just a reminder, the presentation today is being recorded or has been recorded. And the presentation slides, they are available in the handout section, but once we get the most recent presentation, we'll also upload that on our agency's webpage, and Dan put the link into the chat feed there for everybody. You'll also get a certificate of attendance and a follow-up email with a link to the recording, and you'll also find a survey there as well. So Jody, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. Just a reminder to please fill out that survey for us. Once we close out of this session, you'll get a survey that will pop up in your web browser. If you could take a couple seconds to fill that out. With this being our first virtual conference, we definitely want your feedback, good and bad, so that we can continue to make this better for everybody. So if you could do that for us, we'd really appreciate it. You'll also receive a link to the survey in that follow-up email in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then last slide for me, please, Jody. We do have a full, this is our third day, but about a 3-week time period where we are doing these sessions. They're always at 10 a.m. in the morning and then at 2 p.m. over the next 3 weeks on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So our next session is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Comes from the program that I started at with the agency, and it will be the hazardous waste requirements, the basics, part 1 and 2. And just a reminder, if you do want to attend both parts, you do need to register for both sessions individually. If you click on the handout in the handout section that says Compliance Conference Program, all of the links are in there to register if you haven't done so. So with that, Amanda, Jody, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I think our attendees did as well. It was great to see that interactive feedback. It was our first time doing that. So thank you for doing that, and have a great afternoon, everybody. We hope to see you for our future sessions.